Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to this first edition of UX Beer in Brussels for this year. It's been a while since we hadn't this event in Brussels, so we're glad to have you here. Thank you, Namahn, for hosting us tonight. And maybe just to see in the crowd who is a new UX Beer member who is the first time. Yeah? Oh, okay, good. A lot of new people, welcome to you and welcome to this talk. A bit about us. So we were founded 14 years ago, and it all started in Antwerp by a group of UXers that wanted to share knowledge, get together, create a community, and now it's kind of crazy, but we are more than 4,000 members. We are one of the largest community in Europe, so that's not nothing. And Antwerp stays the original hub. This is why they have like more frequent and recurrent events. It's each last Tuesday of the month. And in Brussels, we host 4 events a year, and it's each second Tuesday of each quarter. So if you are willing to go to see us in Antwerp and in Brussels, there's plenty of events to go. And by the way, I'm Anaïs. I'm part of the new volunteers, and with Aurora, Yasmin, and Victor, we've taken over the Brussels chapters with the help of the Antwerp volunteers also that really guide us during all this process. Also, hello to Ralph. He's not that new, but he's our technical side, so thank you for supporting us tonight, even if he's more leaning toward Antwerp crew. It's also a new year, so we are pleased to announce a new chapter in Hasselt. The next event will be at the end of the month, the 26th of February. And it all started because in Hasselt there's a growing community of UX designers. And Ellen and Brecht had already started to gather people, and it just makes perfect sense to join forces and to welcome them in this UX Beer family. So welcome, Hasselt. I'm a new volunteer here. We are a lot of new volunteers, but we are always looking for people. So if you're interested in helping us to make those events possible, please reach out to us. You can talk to us. We have the badge here, and we'll be just pleased to have more people on board. We are always also looking for hosts and sponsors, so if you are an agency or if you work at an agency, I think it's a great opportunity to gain visibility and also to support those kind of events and just connect with professionals all around Belgium. And if you have a topic in mind, please reach out to us, because I think it's a great way to train yourself for presenting your work, your thoughts, giving insights to the community. Don't be shy, even if you're a junior. We have room and we have space for any topic that is related to UX. And yes, we're always looking for speakers, so also reach out to us. We have all the events, you can see all the events in the meetup pages for each chapters, and also you can join our Slack channel. Here you will find some channels for finding a job, also to asking for advices from people from the community. It's a great way also to follow up the events and have update about your experience. And our host of today is Namahn. Thank you so much to host us today. Namahn is one of the pioneers of UX, even before it was a well-known practice. So we will have a great talk of Johan soon, and you will learn more things about Namahn. And of course, I'm going to mention our long-term sponsors. Creative Skills supported us since a long time, And so if you're seeking for a new position or just jobs in the creative industry, you will maybe find your happiness here. And also one of our longest sponsor is Ariad. It's a group of super talented recruiter. It's all about finding the right job for the right person. And please, if you are looking for opportunities, you can also reach out to them. And thank you to all of our sponsors today to helping us to make this event possible. So the program of tonight is Johannes that will give us a talk about how data, compute, and algorithm eats UX. Sorry. And I think it's more also about, because he has so much experience in the field, his vision of how we see the field evolving and going toward in the near futures. And after, we will do a small break of 15 minutes, and then we will have on stage Federica that will talk to us about new way of assessing accessibility and colors in this digital era. So thank you so much to all of you to be there to share your knowledge, and we can start with Johannes right now.
Yes, let's get the video okay, and we'll turn off slides because I will be speaking with you and have no slides. But this talk is recorded, that's why we have the camera, and I will give you a lot of references to books, articles, podcasts, and I will provide the kind people from UX Beers with a list of those to add them in the show notes on the YouTube recording, if that is okay. So if you want to delve deeper on some of these topics, and I hope you will, because I wish I would have all the time to read all those references. They're sometimes very inspiring, and some of them I did read. So let's get going. So I will be talking a bit about how to make predictions and how hard it is. I will be talking about the state of the UX industry in which we all are, how Namahn is responding to this state. Then we'll talk about data, compute, and algorithms. I didn't want to have AI in the title, so I just data. Okay. And then what a design is supposed to do, how to respond to this thing that is happening to us, and what is surprising, and what are we going to be designing if it's not screens? And what is the craft, what are the skills, what are the tools, and there we will be speculating a lot, and again repeating how difficult it is to make predictions and how often I got it wrong. All right, is that fine? Yeah? Okay. So we'll be talking about the next quarter of this century. Okay, finishing the first quarter now, and the situation is serious. In the world, it's very uncertain. There's the systems that we are part of are shaking themselves. There's the ecological crisis, obviously. There's the geopolitics. You're aware of that, I'm sure. And there's also the technical innovation which is hitting us. Some people say it's the invention of the wheel, of writing, of steam power, electricity, the phone, the internet, pick any of all of them. It is a revolution for sure that you will be talking about with your grandchildren and children. You were there, right, when this happened, I think. But the good news is that the future is already here, and it's just not evenly distributed. Said who? No? Science fiction writers, readers, William Gibson. William Gibson said so. So the future is here, right? You already know what is going to collectively. You know what is going to happen. It's happening here and there, and some of the things I'll be talking about you know more than I about. Okay, so we are here as a community. I think that's very strong proposition. I promise you and myself to leave time for questions and answers, because that's maybe the most interesting part of this talk. But keep them short, the questions and also the comments. It doesn't have to, if you have a comment at the end, I hope to leave about 10 minutes or so in my 35 minutes that I was allowed. Yeah. And so the state of the industry, I'll be mostly speaking from the agency perspective, not the perspective of freelancers, many of you are, or the perspective of the in-house teams. You are part of that as well. But what I'm talking about will be relevant for everybody, I think. And when I call the current state of the industry a design winter, everybody seems to agree with that terminology. Yes, it's difficult. Okay. So why is it difficult? Without going into great detail, there's what the Germans say, neue Sachlichkeit, nieuwe Zakelijkheid. There's let's get down to business. Let's not deal with all this UX, soft nonsense and human-centered, etc. Proximus used to have a department which was called OX and UX, operational excellence and user experience. I'm sure that operational excellence has become much more important now than user experience for them. Okay, that's one cause. Now UX is also being commoditized. Like there are so many of us, and honestly, when I started, I felt that I was alone, and maybe I was alone. Now there's 4,000. Okay, so there's so many people out there, and the methods that we are using are standardized, right? I mean, there is a shared vocabulary. It's so easy to transfer knowledge about UX to others, all these courses there. So there's a commodification that has happened. It could also be viewed as a luxury, something that you add to a product. I just read in the newspaper that Harley Davidson lost half of its sales. You know what I'm saying? So it's a luxury product, so you leave that out. But also the growing maturity, which has to do with this commodification as well, the growing maturity of our clients. I'm talking as an agency now, where they in-house, they can do it themselves, and good for them, right? They can get people on the market, the methods are fairly widely shared, there are great bodies of knowledge. And maybe our contribution to the well-being of the world is not all that great. You know about infinite scrolling, right? The guy who invented this, I had to look this up, the guy who invented this, the infinite scroll in 2006, he regrets it very much. And his name is, I'll say his name is Asa Raskin. He's ashamed of himself. And he worked at a company with the name sounds a bit ironic now, Humanized. Okay. And he has expressed significant regret about this. And here's another something that here's a book that I just got today. There's a few that I got. It's called The Extinction of Experience. It says reclaiming our humanity in a digital world. So human-centered design and digital sometimes doesn't go together very well. I have a lot of books here that you may want to look into that have inspired me. Okay, but then there's also, of course, AI, which is sucking a lot of air out of the room, actually all the air out of the room. So the question now is how to respond to this approach. How because indeed AI is creative in a way, right? I mean, they say it's hallucinating, but on the other hand, these hallucinations could be looked upon as a sort of creativity, right? So AI is creative in that sense. I think in order to respond to do you want me to stop briefly, or shall I just continue?
Well, they can still hear you.
Okay,
so
well, that's most important, I think. Good thing I have no slides. The commodification that has happened, so it's becoming common good, one way to respond to that is, of course, to go more into specialization. And I think what 11 Ways is doing, right, is specializing in accessibility. What we at Namahn will be doing is also specialization. Okay. Now I'll briefly talk about Namahn. So we have to rethink the agency. We are under a lot of pressure, economic pressure, and we are repositioning ourselves as advisors for organizations in decision making in complex situations. I didn't say design yet, right? So I'm focusing a lot more. What does the client expect from us? What kind of impact do we hope to have on our clients? So helping them in making decisions in complex situations. And then there's two parts. One, long-term decision making, where we help leaders go through a journey of a couple of weeks to, inspired by systems thinking, to make decisions about complex matters. Nothing digital there, right? And this is our practice in systemic design. Many of you know this, where one of the partners here at Namahn wrote a book, this book, and so that's for strategic long-term thinking, not necessarily digital. Then there's the other part, where we help in decision making for the short term, maybe for the real time. And there we design user interfaces for controlling factories, for controlling planning, for doing very complex stuff. So where the decisions need to be made in the moment, and they are very critical, they're very difficult, because there's so many things you need to take into account. What's happening out there in the world, in your factory, in airspace, with your pipelines, and we want to focus on infrastructure. So not only just decision making in complex matters, but also infrastructure as a domain of specialty. So no consumer work, right? Infrastructure, because it makes things happen. It makes things possible in the world, and that's why we like to work in infrastructure. A lot of our clients right now are, of course, in infrastructure. But then we also need to lean into AI, take it very seriously, because in these domains, long-term and also short-term decision-making, AI is playing a role and will play an increasingly important role. And now a brief plug, somewhere in May, we will be delivering a half-day training on how to use AI for helping you in doing design work. Okay, that will be announced on our website sometime next week or so. Okay. Good, so that was that bit. Okay, now let's go into the data, compute, and algorithms. The numbers are mind-boggling. How much data is being ingested. These big foundation model providers are squeezing every gram of information that they can get out of the internet and elsewhere. The compute is amazing. I mean, the power, there's hundreds of thousands of chips are being put to work, each chip costing a small car, right? That's what an NVIDIA chips cost, tens of thousands of euros. And the algorithms that are being used, they manipulate billions, and maybe in the future trillions of parameters at the same time. So, it's like the universe. You can't imagine how big it is, right? So my question is to you, when AI came up, what did you find the most striking? What surprised you? It said, whoa. I mean, it certainly was sufficiently advanced to be magical, right? It was incredible. And
the rate of adoption is pretty high as compared to looking at the different other technologies.
The rate of adoption was tremendous. Yes, it was just, and it was worldwide. It was free, and it was, everybody got blown off their seats. Right? But what exactly blew people off their seats? Conversational quality, maybe. I mean, what surprised me was what a linguist would call anaphora, and what a computer scientist would call statefulness. Meaning, when I went into the conversation, the bot remembered what I said previously. that didn't happen before, right? And that was so surprising, and also that, let's call it the context window or the memory. Also, that is increasing. Initially, it was just a few sentences, but now you can load, as you all know, reams of books into the context window or the memory. Take your notebook LM, and so also that is increasing. So you'll be able to commit your whole life at some point in time into the context window, and then your conversation will be not only referring to what you said, a few minutes ago, but what you said 2 years ago, which is sort of interesting. Okay, now, what are designers supposed to do with all of this? Well, a few things. First of all, I think you should be familiar with the concept of human-centered AI. And there's a very good institution called the Stanford Institute Center for Human-Centered AI. I'll put the reference in the notes, right? Which has been doing a lot of work about this, and they know a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of good materials. They have talks that they record and that are available for you, and I will refer to a specific one later. You also are certainly aware, if you follow this a little bit, that the EU AI Act has calls for human-centered AI. You will not find anything about UX there. It's mostly about what's called alignment. Okay, so aligning what the AI wants, because it could, does things. Maybe not explicitly one, but it does things, and that the things that it does are aligned with what people need. So this is about safety. It's about interpretability, right? Can we tell what the machine did? About transparency, about representation engineering, and there is FARI, which is we're in Brussels, right? FARI is an institute for the AI for the common good. It's a joint venture, sort of subsidized by the EU between the VUB and the ULB. And they do a lot of talks about AI, and if you want to, it's very close by. They're quite good. I can recommend them. So that's what you can do, but also be aware of the new frontier. And the new frontier is one of them is agentic AI, where the AI is not just talking to you but also doing things for you. It becomes an agent, right? Which is why, again, William Gibson's book Agency is so wet. Okay, but the new frontier is not in the design of pixels or flows on a screen, right? That's going to be like the fax. It's still there, right? Or like the radio. It is still there, even getting a revival now via podcasts. But there is something happening there, right? There is a shift happening. And if you want to be a player in UX, and there will be a UX, right? But it not be on screens, okay? And my position here, and it will not surprise you, is that it's in the design of conversations. So there is this topic of, if you can look it up, right? Conversational AI design. It's a whole world that opens with a lot of research, a lot of things going on. So what does that mean, conversational AI design? It's not pixels, right? It's not visual design. You design personalities. You design how you will relate to this machine, to this thing, right? And maybe open a brief parenthesis. I catch many people calling bots him, right? Now, in the Germanic languages, we have the privilege of having a neutral, right? There is it, right? Let's call it it, right? And so, of course, the Romanistic languages do not have it. But surprisingly enough, in Farsi, Persian, right? They don't have neutral, they don't have feminine, they don't have masculine. It's all u. It's just one. It's gender neutral. So the Persians have it easy. They just use u. Any Persian speakers in the room? Yes. Okay. Well, there you go. Right. Okay. Congratulations. So conversational AI design. So how do you design a conversation? How do you go about doing this? So first of all, you have to give it a role, right? It could be a teacher, a coach, a student, a peer, a friend, an opponent, a lover, a challenger, right? There is a lot of this. There's AI friends. You must be aware of this, right? It's huge. It's becoming huge. Tens of millions of people building serious relationship with AI friends. Okay, there's a whole industry there. How do you want this AI to behave to its users? Do you want them to be, sycophantic, meaning, oh yeah, you're great, right? ChatGPT does that, right? And this is a great idea this is such a great question you ask me. Do we really like that? How do you not get on people's nerves? Like Clippy, the Microsoft Clippy, got on your nerves, or the ChatGPT gets on my nerves sometimes. Anthropic Claude much less so. Anthropic Claude has a very pleasant personality. How do they do that, right? I go to Claude, although technically ChatGPT may be superior. So also, how do you build trust? How can the bot convey what to expect of it? I was asking a complicated question to Claude a while ago about languages and law systems and countries and the European Union, and it proposed to me, to my surprise, to build a little React component which explained it all in an application. I said, yes, go ahead. So that was surprising, and I said, whoa, you can do that too, right? And so how do you sort of trade control between the person and the bot? Who takes initiative? This is called co-piloting. It's called turn taking, trading control. So you may have noticed that in these last few weeks, your bots have been more audacious in asking you questions at the end, right? Yeah, that's because they feel confident enough not to insult you with those questions. The people who trained the bots, right? Because there's a lot of training going on there. Don't think it's all automatic, right? There's a lot of human work there, a lot of human work behind the. And I'll talk about that later a little bit. Okay. Now, in order to design conversations, in order to create these personalities, these personas, if you know what I'm saying, yes, you know, how to do this, and where to get inspiration. And I haven't been reading up on these, but I just offer it to you, right? There's something called social linguistics, right? How is language used in social contexts? You want the bots to behave appropriately, right? In line with the conventions, which are different all across the world. So cultural sensitivity is very important. We should not all be, if you, for example, take Notebook LM from Google, which generates based on text that you put in a podcast interview, right? Between two, they're very annoying, right? These two people, a man and a woman, talking to each other. It's not appropriate for a European context. I wish I could switch a dial and tone down the enthusiasm, guys, in the podcast. That was, There is affective science, which is another source of inspiration, which is the psychology of emotions. This is an interesting one. Pragmatics, which focuses on how context influences meaning in communication. I talked about the context window previously being something really important, all the memory that the bot has built about you and the conversations you had in the past. So that should influence your communication to a certain extent. Maybe there should be selective forgetting every once in a while. Forgiveness, I don't know, right? And then there's psychotherapy, which is certainly interesting because, this is the book, the first bot was built by this guy. It was called Eliza. And this book by Joseph Weizenbaum, this is 1976. Weizenbog's ELIZA was based on patterns of Q&A in what's called patient-centered psychology. Yeah, it was in the 40s and in the 50s. So, and you know, this bot that he built, which was extremely simple, based simply on a rule-based, very simple natural language processing, people could not get enough of it because it was so interesting, because it always asked questions back from the audience and always kept the conversation going. It was so surprising. And there's also, I didn't know this word before yesterday, gelotology, meaning the science of humor, right? Has a bot ever made you laugh? It's ridiculousness, yes, but really made you laugh because it made a good joke? No, right? It's an incredible sign of intelligence, right? Understanding the context, what somebody said before in the group, that you can make a joke that makes people crack. It's very, very difficult to do, as I'm proving today. Okay. Thank you. Now, which tools are going to be available? And we're almost going to go into Q&A. It's not going to be Figma, right? And I don't know if there are any tools now for conversational design, but I do know that the foundational model providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and those guys and girls, they have tools for this. Because what comes raw out of the pre-training, as it's called, right? GPT is the pre-trained, right? The pre-trained transformer. What comes out of the pre-training with all these computers spent is worthless. It needs to be fine-tuned. They call it fine-tuning. So they shape the personality of their large language model to be a fit for conversation. And when I read about this, I see that people talk about this as if it is fine-tuning. It is teaching. It's not engineering. It's not if then else, right? It's pruning, cutting, right? What is appropriate? Slowly growing the model. And one interesting technique, I think, which you should remember and maybe delve a little bit deeper in, and I'll put in a reference to an excellent lecture published by this Stanford Institute on Human-Centered AI. It's not published yet, but it will be published in a few days, where engineers from OpenAI, one of the founders of OpenAI, who then left to start up Anthropic from Claude, right? And somebody from OpenAI talk exactly about this topic, about prompting and reinforcement learning. Oops, that's me telling I have to stop. Prompting, and it's called reinforcement learning from human feedback. RLHF. Yes, I know. Yes, I can turn it down. Yes, okay. So I will put a link to this reinforcement learning through human feedback, because I believe that there will be tools on the market in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now where you will be able to shape the personality of a bot with tools which are simplified versions of the ones that are used by these thousands of people who are right now trying to shape the language models in such a way that they have a nice personality, you can have a good conversation with them. Okay, and now I would like to finish by repeating that the world is highly unpredictable, it's fast moving, the situation is not stable. The worst AI that you've ever seen is the AI that you are using now. It is going to get better every time. It's easy to make predictions, as I just did, but it's difficult to put it to work, and deciding it on a timeline is particularly hard. As I demonstrated when I wrote an article about agentic AI, trust and well-intended deceptions, statefulness, congestion, charging, autonomous driving, and statistics-based personalization, although I didn't always use those names. I left a copy of this article over here. Don't try to use the fax number or the CompuServe email address to give me feedback. They don't work anymore. I wrote it in 1994, which proves my point that it's easy to make predictions, but hard to act upon those predictions at the right time. Here's an article with a nice picture of myself 30 years younger and with an English translation as well. Thank you very much. But we do have questions on it, right? Still a little bit?
No, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
questions or comments? Comments are welcome too. Oh, yes. Oh, well, you went well. Oh, in the back. Yes. Go ahead in the back.
First?
Mm-hmm.
And just as one comment about.
Oh yeah, maybe the microphone.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wait. There wasn't.
Right.
No, like. Can I?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, by the way, I brought some books here that I found inspiring. Some of them I read them, others not. But about AI and all of that stuff. There's also some science fiction. Hey, Peter. Okay, go ahead. Your question.
I don't know if everybody hears me. So I just want to add one comment about when you said that actually when the AI is hallucinating, being creative. I think we should take that with a bit grain of salt because it's not really creating anything. It's just when it is not knowing exactly the answer, it's just statistically predicting the next potential answer.
I totally agree. But do you know what I don't know what I'm gonna say in 10 seconds from now. I'm improvising as well. I'm just improvising all the time. So it's not. I'm not very deterministic. I wouldn't apply any consciousness to them. I definitely want to call it it, but statistically, it's similar in a way. Okay. But honestly, I don't want to get into the discussion about consciousness or extinction and that sort of things. It would take us on a completely different path, if you don't mind. Okay.
Maybe after that then.
Yes, yeah, we can definitely, out there, yeah, definitely.
I want to participate in that.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Okay, okay, more questions. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just riffing off what you said. I haven't given this a lot of thought. I'm curious, the way we think about developing like digital solutions, there is the computer side of things and then there's the human side.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that work in UX, I'm sure, have all had the situation where like those of us that deal with people, when we present something to the engineers who don't deal with people, their solutions are often just not good.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't anticipate all of the things we've seen in like unit testing and all of this. What you're talking about seems to be moving from a direction of computer-human interaction to like near human-human interaction, because you're talking about switching from like UIs to conversations.
Yes.
So currently, we have a class of people that are good at conversations. They're called like social butterflies, and they don't need to study this. They're just good at talking to people. And there's us who are not so good at talking to people, at least stereotypically, the engineers. Do you see, so like you mentioned, for example, humor research, right? Yet there are stand-up comedians who didn't have to do humor research, they're just naturally funny. And yet, I would also venture to say that sometimes a person is funny not because like they put words in the correct order, but because we find their life interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents got divorced and that's why they're, etc. So there's like this deeper layer, which AI can't really touch. Do you see the kind of practitioner that will be doing this work changing, considering that this is going more towards like social interactions?
Yeah. I think high EQ would be, and I now realize I'm actually not carrying a mic.
They understand you.
Oh, okay,
They hear.
yeah, right. There is, I think, for conversational design, I think you need a high EQ than you would need for, say, visual design, right? So yes, the skill set the craft will be changing, you will be inspired by other domains. But this tension between us designers who want to take the technology in the human direction and those doing the work on the statistics, that tension will always remain there, and it's a healthy tension because sometimes the developers are creative as well, right? And they can bring us new ideas that can oh, that's unfortunate. Somebody at the door. Yes, I will shut it down if I can. Not quite.
But do you foresee emotional intelligence, for example, as a requirement on a CV within the next 10 years?
Well, I think it would be very useful to put it on a CV, but they're not going to believe you until until you have the meeting, right? Yeah. But I'm not sure that I answered your question completely, but your comment was interesting. That's for sure. Yes, Federica.
So I was thinking, I think I heard or read
Maybe the
somewhere-
microphone, yeah. Is it okay?
Last question.
Yeah, I think I heard or read somewhere that there is, sort of in the early stage of development of a technology, there's always a phase where it is textual. So for example, with computers, like the terminal, and then it became a graphic interface. And so I'm just wondering, I mean, I don't even know if this is, I think it went this way in other instances, but if it's worth investing so much in like having sort of a personable terminal instead of moving on to a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I fair point, an interesting perspective, and of course text is much easier to manipulate than images, certainly moving images. And it's a natural fit with the programming language, right? Although the generative AI also applies to images, as you know, with diffusion models, it's quite different. But if you go back into history, I mean very far, there was language before there was writing, and I mean voice mode, as it is now available on ChatGPT, is great, right? You just talk, right? So there's no text even. There's just language you're talking, and so I believe there's a room for both. I'm not saying at all that visual displays will not exist anymore, not at all. But there will be a complementary interaction between complementary modes, where you will be talking and listening to your computer and looking at things that it presents, or you will show things, of course, which is coming up now. You will show the world to the computer, and the computer will help you get along. So, but I'm just saying that the conversational, I put a great emphasis on conversational AI design to make a stark contrast with the screen design. But both will exist. I mean, the radio is still there, right? Even if there is TV or the internet and fax. Actually, there is still fax, right? Not that number. So these technologies will coexist for a very, very long time because obviously, in visual you can grasp a lot more. In one visual human system is great, right? And you want to continue exploiting that, but together with this sort of very pleasant interaction with a simulated person. Yes, and then your question. Yes, and then that's the last one.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You've approached a bit like where the world is going, and I was curious, and I'm going to try to keep it short. If you're approached by ISHEC, the school, yes, exactly, as their strategic advisor to redesign their curriculum, what would be maybe seven classes that you would include into their curriculum?
Oh, okay. So yeah, you wanted to have give me a list of 7 classes you would like to include.
Based on all the everything that you
I
shared
would.
with us.
Sounds like a
Well, I would definitely. I would definitely go for a a good understanding of how the technology works. I mean, that is fundamental, I think, because you need to be able to talk to developers and engineers. You need credibility. So you don't need to be able to do the statistics or understand the statistics. You don't need to be able to be a developer, but you must speak their language, right? So, because you got to work with them. So, a very good understanding of that bit. On the one hand, and then of course I would add a course on tools for conversational AI design, right? And then in the middle, some courses on the more philosophical bit, which is, you know, what we do not want to talk about, right? It's you know, the consciousness, because you want to have a conversation about that, right? You want to be able to respond to that, or at least have an opinion. There's some books about that here, but also, you know, tools as they evolve. I mean, I found out about consensus recently. I started really liking Claude and its evolving capabilities. You must have heard about Notebook. I mean, these tools are coming all the time. And so, making your students, you teach at that school, yes. Okay. Make the students aware of the latest tools, which will require a teacher, you know, who keeps updates his course every single year, right? Because it'll be moving extremely fast. So I'm not at 7, but maybe at 4 or 5 already, huh? So, any other ideas? What should be taught at EX?
Ethics.
Ethics. Oh yes, of course. Thank you, Clementina.
Maybe cinema also. I think the industry of cinema, they are so used to craft characters and persona. I think they will have a role in crafting those imaginary.
Yes. So how do we call that science? Theatrics? No. Rhetorics.
Dramaturgy.
Dramaturgy. Yes, that's it. Yes. Scenario writing. Yeah. Filmmaking. Yeah. Movie making. Other things, and I think we should really close now. Huh? Okay. So thank you for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so now we have break for a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy it still.
No.
Okay, I have to open it to bring it there. There should be a panel. AI-generated title that I already can't stand anymore, and I will regret for life, like a tattoo you get at 15. A reminder to use AI responsibly for all of us. So, hi, I'm Federica. I work as a digital accessibility specialist at 11 Ways, which is a consulting firm that provides digital accessibility services to government organizations, product team, digital agencies, private companies. And I love design and typography, which is why I'm happy to talk about both in this talk. What does a digital accessibility specialist do? Well, I do mainly 3 types of things. I work as a consultant, which means that I am involved in a sort of bigger picture conversation in organization on how to integrate accessibility. So are we going to run some automated accessibility testing? Should we have an accessibility policy? Do the designers know how to do design annotations? And also running usability tests with disabled users. But also I do a lot of audits, which means that I see a lot of websites and apps, which train me to view design through an accessibility lens. And then I also give trainings on accessibility and present in Empathy Labs, which is more like immersive setup where we show how the web is experienced by personas that have a disability. So, who wants to hear an origin story? Well, you have to. So, it's my origin story in accessibility. And it starts with this armchair. So for those who are not in the know, this is the LC2 armchair by Le Corbusier, one of the most prominent architects of the 20th century, probably. And my parents have a couple of these armchairs, and I was chilling just in front of the fireplace with my granny a few years ago. And at some point she sat on the LC2 armchair and she got stuck in it. We couldn't get her out for a while. Then we got her unstuck and she was fine. But this small incident, domestic incident, really got me thinking, because it could be an instance of like bad design that still looks great. And disregard for ergonomy, but actually Le Corbusier was someone who really thought a lot about this stuff. So why does the LC2 armchair hate grandma if he thinks a lot about body proportions? Because it is based on the modular, which is an anthropometric scale of proportion, which was created by Le Corbusier in 1948, and that he applied to his architecture and furniture. So basically, the modular man, as you can see here in these drawings, is sort of a healthy white male, enhanced by some mathematical proportional gimmicks like Fibonacci series or golden ratio. So at the same time, it's both idealization and an abstraction of man. And as a result, most modern architectural forms are calibrated on a similar body, and that's why the LC2 armchair turns into a trap for the body of someone who is 86 and with limited mobility and kind of like doesn't have the perfect V shape. So it was at that moment where I realized that design can include and exclude, can enable and disable, and this all like many years and sort of adventures later led me to accessibility. But now let's get to it, text to background color contrast. So we're going to see 3 parts. We're going to see how color contrast is working now in WCAG 2, how it's working for APCA, this famous new algorithm, and then we're going to draw some conclusions. Before we start, just some vocabulary. I'm sure you know because like a bunch of designers here, but just to be sure that when I use these terms later, we're all on the same page. Hue is the uniqueness of a given color. So you have red, which is a hue, and then orange is another one, and blue, etc.
saturation here, it's with the color on the top, the red stripe on the top is the most saturated, and the one on the bottom, like kind of this more brownish red, is the least saturated. Is the intensity or purity of a color versus no color. And then the luminance, very important for us later, is a physical measure of light, disregarding hue. So this is important. I mean, I'll stress it that luminance is maths. Is like it's calculated with the mathematical, with mathematics, and is the quantity of light in a color. And then what is color contrast? Because we're going to talk about it for a sec. So it's how one color stands out from another color. And you have a foreground color, for example, here the white text, and you have a background color, the orange here. It's a pretty big deal because, the web is very visual, and 99% of the internet users who see the screens are relying on good color contrast to be able to read. And for readability, we need ample lightness contrast. So lightness is the human perception of luminance that we saw earlier. So this is the most critical factor. Whereas hue saturation, they play just a minor role in readability. So WCAG 2. First of all, I just wanted to check how many of you already checked for color contrast in your designs. All right, that's good. What is your experience with it? I don't know, some outliers, people love it, people hate it. It's okay.
No one is going to say that they hate it for you now. So.
Well, I'm curious, maybe we're going to talk about it more later in the question, what's your experience with WCAG 2, and if you're sometimes frustrated or
challenging, let's put it that way.
Challenging.
we had a couple of fights, so
okay. Yeah, it happens. But yeah, so I mean, you use it, and how does it work, this WCAG contrast ratio? First of all, it is a ratio of the luminance, remember, of the foreground colors and the luminance of the background color. So it is a ratio of two, this sort of more mathematical figures that we have on a color. It revolves around three figures, three of these ratios. 3:1, which is the absolute minimum for large text content. 4.5:1, which is the minimum contrast for body text. And then, if you really are trying to do the best, there is 7:1, the contrast, the recommended contrast ratio for body text. As you see, there are not a lot of variables in here. There is large text and small text, large being larger than 24 pixels or bold and larger than 19 pixels. And there is only like two types of weight, so you have bold text and normal text, 400, 700. And I mean, just to give you an idea on this slide, because of the contrast on this slide, the text, how does it work there? On dark background is like 9.6:1, and the text here, like the dark text on light background, is around 13.6:1. And the maximum ratio is 21:1, and you really don't want that because it's black 0,0,0,0,0 and white FFFF, which we all know doesn't look good and make your eye tired very quickly, and can give headaches. So that's far too much. So what's wrong with this? I think, I mean, you could already tell from my explanation there are some criticalities with this algorithm. But the main one is that this sort of a pass-fail nature of the guidelines that does not really serve human perception. So this is not how we see color, and so it doesn't work to assess if contrast is good or not. because humans are not like computers. We perceive over a range, and our perception of color are non-linear. They're sensitive to context, and they're not absolute. So there is no truth, only perception. This is a quote by Gustave Flaubert in Madame Bovary. Is a quote with great potential for misuse, and I will try to use it for good here tonight. So, like, color is not real, and and color contrast is also not real. It's just a perception. So it is how your brain interprets visual differences from the surrounding visual information. And so contrast cannot be really evaluated as a measure of the difference between the luminance of two colors. So, and to show you that, I have a small game. It's more like, this game's, it could be the exercise that you do at an ophthalmologist or something, but more fun. And I need a volunteer.
What do I need to
Yeah,
do?
okay. Okay, volunteer, thanks. Here we go. So here, you're gonna see 10 sets of buttons, and right and left, and you tell me which one. We could do the one with more contrast, or we could do the one that you read better, because contrast is not the only thing, as you wish.
Okay.
And then afterwards we're gonna see how your perception, how it, if it matches or not with the WCAG criteria.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start. Left or right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Left.
Daring combination. Yeah.
Left. Left. Right. Right.
Okay. So here, highlighted in red are the ones, the buttons that you selected that don't pass WCAG, but that you thought were more readable.
Okay.
And what do we have here? So, for example, this is set 9 is quite a classical thing that we see. So you said you preferred this one, which is sort of the dark text on a light background, whereas the light text on dark background has a higher score. And this is, we're going to see it, it's because it happens quite often with WCAG, because some colors have, there are issues with some color, famously orange, but also in the dark colors, WCAG is not the best guideline. But also, I don't know, do you have anything you found like interesting while you were seeing, or like some color combination you were like, no way?
Yeah, sometimes it was more difficult, but I find it interesting. Yeah, to see that I took some wrong moves basically. It's apparently not that obvious.
Yeah, you or WCAG, I don't know. Yeah, who took the wrong moves here, but yeah.
Has the beam or anything to do with it?
Definitely, probably a lot to do with it. Yeah. Also, I'm seeing something. We're all seeing different realities here. I'm seeing on retina screen. You're seeing here the projector, and you're seeing the projector from a distance. It's definitely. But so let me try to get back to the presentation. Yes. So yes. We were saying, like, looking at the buttons, what was wrong with this algorithm? That it overestimates contrast for dark colors. So normally the kind of lighter colors on dark background will appear to have a better color contrast. For example, here, I don't know if you see it, but it's just like this is gray text on black background, and it passes the WCAG checks. even though it's, I mean, very faint, I would say, not very readable. And so that's why Wicked cannot provide guidance while designing for dark mode, which is very common these days. So it's quite a big deal. Also, Wicked doesn't take into account that color contrast varies also depending on visual impairment. And I mean, here we're going to do a little dive in color blindness, but contrast perception is also affected by other things like low vision, for example, if you have cataract or glaucoma, situation, if you are looking at the screen in sunlight or if there's a glare, and also the device, what we were saying, low, high quality, projections. So, the infamous orange button. Which text do you find more readable? The white. Okay, well, good for you, me too. Personally, I find the white one more readable, and I think there's quite a lot of us. But technically, the black one is more accessible because it passes Wicked too. And this is already something, but what is even more interesting is to look at this button in all these different versions of it that it's just like I ran a plugin for accessibility that created like simulation of color blindness. And so here are simulation of this 4 types of color blindness. This I am replicating a study by Erica O'Connor, which is really great. It's going to be later in my sources. Orange, Are You Accessible? A mini case study on color ratio. So basically what she did, she asked 20 colorblind colleagues to just discuss which of these buttons they preferred. Also, this is like the check with Wicked, so you can see that the black text very consistently passes, even on all this simulation of color blindness, passes Wicked, and the white text doesn't pass Wicked. I like this to visualize it like this, because really you realize that when you are just making your own little orange button, there are other 4 versions of this button out there in like people's perception in your users, and so I think it's interesting to visualize this, and ideally to take also into account when designing. And what are the results of these interviews that Erica O'Connor made? So, the majority of the colorblind users, 61%, prefer the white text, which doesn't pass Wicked. And you can see here the different figures for Truthanopia, like prefers white text. Deuteranopia is more like 50-50, and Trithanopia definitely white text, and Achromatopsia definitely black text. So it is varied, and it's just a study with 20 people, but it's something. And also it's interesting that some participants mentioned other issues that are not really, in terms of color contrast, but for example, like the combination of black and orange gave them like sort of a buzzing like feeling or headaches, which was something that when I was doing the test with the different buttons, sometimes I encountered people saying it's not like really the contrast issue here, it's just I don't like this color combination. It's weird. That's why I was inquiring. Yes, and also, the Wicked 2 was introduced in 2008. So lots of things have changed since. Now we're working with Wicked 2.2, but Wicked 2 is like the main version of that, that we're working with. And these contrast guidelines were created before smartphones and iPad and Retina, and displays were bulky and more like this, and websites used core web fonts. That was life back then. And also I'm sure that if some of you are more like UI designers, when I mentioned that text, bold and normal text, probably it doesn't really account for all the different weights that you use every day to convey like visual hierarchy. So now we have variable font, so this also weights can be very precise and definitely is more than bold and normal. So that's this font weight is is not taken properly into account for WCAG 2. And so finally, getting to APCA. What is APCA? So APCA is the Accessible Perceptual Contrast Algorithm, which was proposed and developed by Andrew Sommers, a Hollywood-based filmmaker and a visual impaired himself, with 35 years of experience in color and different imaging. So yeah, the guy knows a thing or two about color, and in April 2019 he started a thread on the GitHub WCAG repo where he proposed the APCA algorithm. And how does it work? So it is it is based on a lightness contrast value calculated for the combination of foreground and background. And yeah, here of course the important thing is that instead of luminance, it uses lightness, the human perception of a given luminance. And it is a scale that goes from minus 108 to plus 106, and with the negative values being for light text on darker background. Is a structure in these levels that are not really just about the size and the weight of the text, but it's more about the function that it has on the website. So the threshold for normal body text, sort of fluent text, is 90. Bigger body text, for example, like, I don't know, a quote, pulled out quote from the text, 75. Key information, which he describes as text that you want people to read, navigation labels, call to action, that is 60, 45 for the headings, 30 for the placeholder text, so the lower we're going, the less visible, and 15 for non-text elements, with everything below 15 or better between 15 and minus 15 is considered invisible. Here, just to show you, on a website a little bit how it could work. So as you can see, you have, for example, for the normal body text, which you see down there on the cards, it needs to be, it needs to be 90. Here we have 95. Bigger body text, for example, this kind of quote here, is 76. So we just have enough because 75 was the threshold. And then the different kind of key information. So for example, the key link would be a key information, the call to action, the navigation, and all of these are around the 70s, whereas it's good from 60 up. And the headings, actually we have crazy contrast on the headings, like 94, but 45 would have been enough. We have already seen how it is much more granular, how it's much more precise, and what makes it perceptual. This, so the fact that it takes into account text size and all these different weight. So you have from thin to bold, from 200 to 700, and the thinner the font, the worse the score and the bigger it needs to be. Also, it takes into account how the brain interprets visual difference from the surrounding visual information. Here we have like a very known optical illusion where there are two yellow dots that have the same, technically they have the same luminance, but lightness is definitely different because of the context where they are. One is placed in the shadow of another element, so in a darker context, and the other one is in a lighter context. And the perception of their lightness is totally different. Also, APCA, unlike WCAG 2, gives different scores if you swap the color combination. WCAG 2, it gives you one ratio. Here, for example, it gives you a surprise, baffling pass for this blue button, and of 4.6, and it's the same ratio if you swap it. Whereas for APCA, I mean, it doesn't pass because dark colors, it doesn't look so great. So it treats differently light text on dark background from dark text on light background. And here you can see that it's maybe worth doing it because this is the text we saw earlier of like a dark mode with text that passes WCAG color contrast. And here is text that passes APCA color contrast, which is much more readable in the dark mode. And for all our like buttons that we saw, the orange buttons, a different kind. Here with APCA, it seems to be quite the opposite. So all of them, all the black text fail because a call to action button should be around 60, whereas here we are below, and the white text passes. What is still missing from the APCA is opacity. These days there are a lot of like elements that are not 100% opaque in like web design and design systems, and this is quite complex. As for example, you see these windows that are semi-transparent, and this is a longer conversation because it really depends on the context and where it is going to show to have enough contrast between the text and the background. So, getting to the conclusions. So, do you remember the bit about the modular earlier? So, well, even when they're created in good faith, and and this is the case for WCAG, but not really the case for the modular, norms and standards do not represent the complexity of reality. I mean, there is not one body, there are several, as shown in this image that I really love by this architect, Thomas Carpentier. Who, for his memoir, he did this work subverting the standard modular. And yes, so do not only rely on these norms, standards, tools, and algorithms, because conformance to standards is, we always say in accessibility that is not the best approach, because in the end, sometimes conformance is really hard to attain, and sometimes it's not enough. Even if you get there, actually you can have a website that is perfectly conformant to standards and still like a mess from the UX standpoint. I invite you to stay critical and to look at what you're doing and to think about what you're doing, and also to talk to your users. And in practice, Stark is a plugin for Figma. Maybe you use it already, and it's a good place to start because you can see both WCAG 2 and APCA. And I have a little video, not because I think you don't know how to use Figma, but because it's very like the affordance is really not there. So you have to go like. In this, like it opens this window, and then here you have to click on something that doesn't really have a hover or anything. It's you can see it's switching from WCAG 2 to APCA, and check for both because WCAG 2 is the current regulation, but APCA is rumored to be part of WCAG 3, but we don't know. So for now, I think it's not a bad idea to try to mediate between the two when possible. And then yes, if you want to see my sources, they're all here. And also, I will mention that at 11 Ways we're looking for people. So we're looking for a project manager, possibly trilingual, and a digital accessibility specialist, mid-level. So if you can come to find me or my colleagues, Nora, Eduarda, who are here in the audience, or you can shoot us an email. And yes, so I think that was it for me. Thanks to my colleague for being in the audience, and especially to Sophie, who is not here tonight, but she was also my mentor in accessibility, and she keeps running her mentorship program, and it's really an experience that I can only recommend. Did marvels for me. Thanks for having me, UX Belgium and Namahn.
questions from the audience?
Besides the demo plugin, could you talk a little bit about the tooling and the process you use to integrate Apka into your workflow?
Well, besides the plugin, so Apka has a bit of a learning curve. That's why I presented just this plugin, because it's quite simple, and most automatic tools they provide WCAG 2 checks and not Apka. So yes, there is a lot. I mean, and you can find it in my sources. There are quite a lot of tools that are created also by Andrew Somers, or like listed in his article. They are more complex. I don't use them because I find it too complex. So yes, probably I would redirect you there. I don't really, and I don't work as a designer. Also important to mention. I audit mostly. Yeah.
You criticize other people's design.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have a question because I didn't quite understand some of the wording in your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
When you had all the levels of people, you said some of people were like, were they level of blindness or were they level of
Color blindness. Yeah.
Could you explain those? Because I didn't understand what they were.
Yes, sure. Maybe we can go back to that slide. Yeah, here basically this is just a simulation of how users with a certain type of color blindness see this button. So there are 4 types of color blindness here. Protanopia, which means that you have no red cones. Deuteranopia, no green cones. Tritanopia, no blue cones. And achromatopsia, basically a black and white vision. This is very rough, but it's like an explanation. And so with this plugin, we just reproduced how a person with this type of color blindness would see the button. And yeah, sometimes it impacts, because the color changes, it impacts the color contrast between the 2 colors, because at least one of the 2 is perceived different.
What is the most common, like?
The first 2, Protanopia and Deuteranopia. Yeah.
I had also a question. Actually, I had a talk a while ago with your colleague Norma about something I had in the design system of the client I was working with. So I first thought that contrast rules were only for making sure the content was perceivable, but then I also heard like there's also a rule for that your interface surfaces need to be 3.1 and so forth. And so I see some designs applying it and some not. Like for example Gmail, they still use very soft surfaces. And so my question would be like in what cases do you actually, are like contrast rules absolutely crucial to understand like this is a button, for example, and when can there be other contextual cues for disabled people?
Yeah, this is one that we've talked about. We're like giggling because we have talked about this. So I mean, again, if we're talking about conformance to the guidelines, there is quite a lot of flexibility there. So you don't. I mean, there is a contrast of 3.1 of like elements and background. So for example, buttons. But is not mandatory if you have any other sign or any other marker that this is a button. So for example, if it goes like click here, it shouldn't go like click here, but like whatever, like something that is clearly like a button or clearly like a link, or if there is one of these little icons like the chevron, all of this, they are considered cues useful to understand the function of this element.
Good location on a page?
Also location on a page,
Shapes, sizes.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Sure.
It's also important to know, like this, the non-text contrast criteria is one of the most debatable ones, and I think
We had some
between-
serious debates in
Yes,
our office.
even between us, auditors on the same company, we sometimes have different opinions about it. So it's also good to know that WCAG is a norm, but it's not perfect. So it still has a lot of room to interpretation from each auditor, from each person who is going to interpret this criteria. So sometimes you can have divergent ideas over the same subject. We consider always that if you have extra Q, it's okay. You don't have to.
It always
of course.
helps, right?
Yeah, the text you still have to match,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still open for interpretation.
Okay. Alright. Thanks for the nuanced answer. Let's see. Do we have time for one more? No? Okay. One more.
I have a question regarding testing wise, like how you test or recruit maybe users in different
For this user test.
Yes.
Yes, I mean it's available online. She interviewed 20 colleagues. I think it's important to mention that I mean it's just so the sample is just 20, and also here I mean you have very big figures like 100% for these more rare forms of color blindness, because there was only one person for each. So one person's opinion, and this is a small. I mean, this is like I would say an ambitious blog post that she wrote. So like I don't know how much resources she really had, but definitely she hints at the fact that there should be more research, or this should be improved, continued, like enlarged. So yes, also this is it's a starting point, I guess.
Is there then any digital test or simulator that we can use to automatically test?
Yeah, it's definitely good to try to run this famous plugin, Start plugin, also on your designs. I think it's useful to understand, well, first of all, how it could look like with this different types of vision, but also sometimes it's really helpful to see if you have color dependency. So for example, if you used color as the main vehicle for some information, because then at some if then it's all black and white, you're like, oh, but you can see that this is a link because the link has just a different color from the rest of the text, but it doesn't have an underline, for example. So I think it's useful to run this plugin on the maquettes, and I think it's a quite I mean it's free up to a certain type of usage, and I know a lot of designers work in Figma, so I guess it's quite available.
Maybe I can add something to
Yeah,
it.
is there any add-on extension on Google Chrome? Because sometimes it's not all about design, but also auditing some existing websites or apps.
Yes, there is, and I can try to show you. Or I will give you the name, because we do have some Chrome extensions that we use when testing. Do you remember the names?
Colorblindly is one of them.
Colorblindly, yeah. Then there was this one. Let's Get Colorblind, I think. There's one, Let's Get Colorblind, which simulates, and then because it opened it there.
Also, I think Funkify should have something yet. I mean, even if you just go to the Google Chrome store or like Firefox extensions and just type colorblind, you should be able to find some. And also also when it comes to testing with users, of course, partially it can sometimes be it's difficult to immediately ask your users, like, have it stored in a database what visibility they have. But you can also try to recruit for a specific type of colorblindness.
Sometimes not all the companies have the budget for that, so it's just they rely on you to make everything compliant.
Color blindness, I mean, certain types are quite common, I think. I mean, like, I don't know if I'm not wrong, like 8% of population or something. Male population, I think.
I think 20% or something. It's
Okay.
quite high.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah. What I suggest is, yeah, so we're...
Do we have time for just one session?
Okay, one more. If the rest agrees, yeah.
Sorry, one more question. Last week I was playing with Google Gemini, Google Studio Tool. So you can share your screen and talk with the Gemini. So I did like a test with Figma. I shared my screen, my file Figma, and there was like 2 buttons, and I asked Gemini which buttons he thinks it looks better, and he chose one and he gave some explanation. Do you think we should trust AI right now about this kind of stuff? And what do you think the future of AI with these topics?
Well, I mean, not trusting. Yeah, it's I don't know the way we use it at work, but it's a very safe way of using it. Is like, yeah, you sometimes ask things that you know partially, and then you see what's going on if it sounds trustworthy. But this is also a little bit of a waste, because if you know it partially, why don't you just Google it in a way? But yeah, I think it's hard. I wouldn't trust it just as like this without further research or without further checks. Yeah, I wouldn't, but
especially for testing, because for example on automation tools, there's only 16 out of 50 criteria that can be tested in automation. All the others has to be a manual audit, so it's still very little that you can do, and still you have to recheck, because sometimes it's just a wrong flag. So
just like a comment here also on YouTube for a plugin. Someone said like that Stark slowed down their Figma file significantly, so they switched to use contrast plugin. It's on YouTube on the comments.
So yeah, we had 2 amazing speakers today. So but the conversation doesn't have to end here. So I hope you still stay a while, have some more beers, have some more fun. And as for UX Beers, we will be back in Antwerp at Penda and also in AK Group in Hasselt. So we hope you still have an amazing night. We want to thank both speakers for the interesting topics that they brought to the front, and we wish you a great evening. So thank you.